The courtroom froze mid-sentence. Karen leaned back in her designer heels, a smug grin playing on her lips as if arrogance had taken human shape. "I could buy you, old woman," she said, her tone soaked in wealth and ridicule. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Judy didn't move or even blink. She simply opened a single folder. Moments later, Karen's smile disappeared, and so did her mansion. A ripple of laughter spread through the courtroom, sharp and perfumed with insult. Karen Beaumont reclined in her seat, casually tapping a manicured finger against the table, every gesture declaring that she owned the room. The camera glided across the polished marble floor, catching the sparkle of her diamond bracelet beneath the harsh fluorescent lights. Even the bailiff's stern stare couldn't shake her self-satisfied expression. She had graced magazine covers, funded political campaigns, owned multiple properties, and lost count of how many people she had fired. Today she believed she was here to teach someone beneath her a lesson. Across from her sat Elena Morales, shoulders slightly hunched, hands gripping a worn envelope. Once a housekeeper, now accused of breaking a chandelier worth more than her yearly income. The contrast was striking. One radiated entitlement, the other quiet resilience. Judy observed them both like a hawk behind glass, still and unblinking. Her hands rested on the desk, motionless except for the faint tapping of her pen, a subtle warning only the perceptive could catch. "Miss Beaumont," Judy began, her voice calm but edged with steel. "You're suing for 8,400 in damages for a broken chandelier." Karen smiled as if addressing an assistant. "That's right, Your Honor. My former employee was careless." She has a name," Judy cut in smoothly. "Elena Morales. Use it." Karen blinked, the first crack in her composure. "Of course," she replied with forced politeness. "Elena was careless. She's simply not used to handling valuable items." A murmur passed through the room. The tone was familiar, but never directed this boldly in Judy's courtroom. Elena lifted her gaze. "It broke when she told me to clean it without proper safety equipment. I warned her." Karen's voice cut through sharply. "Don't lie. You're lucky I didn't press charges." The room fell silent. Judy's pen stopped tapping. That silence, heavy and absolute, signaled authority awakening. "Miss Beaumont," Judy said slowly, "I suggest you lower your tone. You are not in charge here." Karen's lips parted in disbelief. No one had spoken to her like that in years. She straightened, her smile returning thinner now. "Oh, I apologize," she said sweetly. "I didn't mean to offend. I just don't appreciate being lied about by people who, frankly, live off my generosity." A soft gasp moved through the audience. Even the bailiff glanced at Judy, waiting. Judy remained still, her gaze sharp and precise. Then she spoke, her voice cutting cleanly through the tension. "Generosity ends where respect begins, Miss Beaumont, and right now, you're lacking both." The words hung in the air. Karen shifted slightly, uncertainty creeping in for the first time. Judy leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Now explain why this invoice appears to have been altered." The room seemed to stop breathing. "Do not interrupt me again," Judy added, her tone quiet but commanding enough to silence everything. Even the cameras hesitated. Karen let out a forced laugh, flipping her hair as if unaffected. "I'm sorry, Your Honor. I didn't realize you were so sensitive." A low murmur of disbelief spread through the room. Judy didn't flinch. "What I am, Miss Beaumont, is patient. But patience has limits." Karen smiled wider, treating the moment like entertainment. "Well, I hope it lasts long enough for you to hear the truth. I'm the one being wronged here." The camera shifted to Elena, still small in her seat, fingers gripping the edge of the old envelope. Her lips trembled, but her voice remained steady. "She fired me when I refused to lie to the insurance company. The chandelier was already damaged. I told her to repair it, not file a claim." Karen laughed again, sharp and dismissive. "Exactly my point, stories. She's good at them. That's why I hired her to clean, not think." Gasps echoed. Even the bailiff shifted forward before Judy raised a hand. One silent command that restored order. "Miss Beaumont," Judy said quietly, "is insulting people under oath a habit, or is today an exception?" Karen blinked, her confidence flickering. "Excuse me," Judy lifted the document. "This invoice, you claim it proves Elena's negligence. The amount is 8,400. She angled it slightly. "This number appears twice, once in black ink, then overwritten in blue." Karen straightened. "My assistant must have corrected it." "Your assistant?" Judy asked, her voice now dangerously calm. "The same assistant who notarized your insurance paperwork." Karen hesitated. "Yes, Monica handles those things." The camera drifted toward the back row, where a young woman sat pale, avoiding eye contact. Judy noticed. "Everyone did I see?" Judy said. "Perhaps Monica should testify next." Karen laughed, but it faltered midway. "This is absurd. She's not even. She's sitting right there," Judy interrupted. "And she just turned pale." The whispers spread like wind through paper. Karen turned sharply. "Monica, say something." But Monica didn't speak. She stared down at her hands, visibly shaking. Judy leaned back slightly. "Silence can be very revealing," she said calmly. It rarely lies. Karen's smile tightened, her composure cracking. Are we really siding with a maid and an intern? Judy's eyes narrowed. No, Miss Beaumont. I'm siding with the evidence. She tapped the blue ink on the invoice. Now tell me, who signed this receipt? Karen opened her mouth, but no words came. The silence answered for her. The faint sound of paper sliding across the desk filled the courtroom. Soft, deliberate, and unmistakably final. Judge Judy moved with deliberate precision, every motion controlled, almost clinical. Each page she flipped felt like another layer of illusion being stripped away. Karen shifted in her seat, the confidence draining from her expression, replaced by a faint twitch at the edge of her lips. Her fingers brushed against her diamond bracelet again, as if it could remind her of her status. Judy didn't look up. This handwriting, she said, tapping the page lightly with her pen. You claim your assistant corrected the figure. Karen nodded quickly. Yes, that's right. She handles those details. Judy finally raised her eyes, steady, sharp, unwavering. Then explain this. She held up two documents side by side. One was the chandelier invoice, the other from an unrelated claim months earlier. The writing was identical, same curves, same strokes, unmistakably the same hand. Karen went still. You seem to file quite a few claims, Judy continued. Damaged floors, broken furniture, leaks, a pattern of very convenient mishaps. Karen swallowed. Things happen when you own multiple properties. You wouldn't understand. Try me, Judy replied, her voice slicing cleanly through the room. The audience leaned forward. Even the cameras seemed to creep closer as if drawn into the tension. Karen searched for a response but came up empty. Her gaze flickered toward the back row where Monica sat frozen, her pale face saying everything she wouldn't. Elena's voice broke through, soft but firm. She told me she'd ruin me if I said the chandelier was already damaged. She wanted the insurance payout. Karen spun toward her. That's a lie. Judy's gavel struck once, sharp and final. Enough. Silence fell instantly. Even Karen's breathing sounded too loud. Judy leaned forward, her voice low and controlled. You do understand that lying under oath doesn't play well on camera. Miss Beaumont, Karen swallowed. I'm not lying. I just adjusted the truth. Judy finished. And here that's no different. The camera closed in. Sweat began to form at Karen's temple, her once perfect posture shrinking little by little. The overhead lights seemed harsher now, as if judgment itself had narrowed its focus on her. Elena lowered her head. I only wanted to keep my job, she whispered. The words landed heavier than any accusation. Judy turned toward her, her tone softening slightly. And instead you were dismissed. Elena nodded. She said people like me don't belong in homes like hers. A quiet wave of reaction passed through the room. Anger, disbelief, sympathy. Karen slammed her hand on the desk. I don't need this nonsense. I could buy this entire show if I wanted. The statement lingered like a warning. The air seemed to grow colder. Judy didn't move, her gaze locked firmly on Karen. Be careful, she said evenly. The last person who thought they could purchase justice left here with nothing. Karen scoffed, forcing a smile. We'll see about that, she said, though her voice cracked slightly. Judy tapped her pen twice against the folder. Maybe we will, she replied calmly, because I haven't even opened the real file yet. The room froze, suspended in tension. Judy's fingers hovered over a closed folder that had sat untouched since the hearing began. Now finally she opened it with precise intent. Papers spread across the bench, bank records, property documents, contractor invoices, each one reflecting the harsh fluorescent light like fragments of truth. Miss Beaumont, Judy began, her voice steady. Before I proceed, confirm something for me. The mansion you currently live in is located at 214 Brookhaven Drive. Correct. Karen hesitated just a fraction too long. Yes, she said carefully. One of them, Judy repeated, as if weighing the arrogance. And it's fully owned by you. Karen smirked. Obviously. Would you like a tour? A murmur moved through the audience. Even the bailiff's expression tightened. Judy looked up calmly. No, but your mortgage company might. Karen's smile faltered. According to these records, that property hasn't been fully yours for over a year. What? Karen's voice snapped. Judy turned another page. It appears the deed was transferred to a shell corporation, one you control, that currently owes more than $600,000 in unpaid taxes. A gasp spread through the room. Cameras zoomed in as the first bead of sweat broke through Karen's composed appearance. That has nothing to do with this case. She shot back. It has everything to do with your credibility. Judy replied. When someone is dishonest in one area, the truth tends to disappear everywhere else. Karen tried to laugh, but it came out strained. You don't understand business. I move assets all the time. Judy leaned forward, her voice dropping to a near whisper. Then let's discuss those assets. She picked up a smaller document marked confidential. I have a letter here from your contractor. He claims you never paid him for installing that chandelier. Karen's face drained of color. That's not true. Judy didn't blink. Would you like me to read the section where he mentions filing claims against you? Or the part where he says your assistant pleaded with him not to take legal action? Karen stiffened. Judy cut in smoothly. This is my courtroom, Miss Beaumont, not your corporate office. The tension in the room became suffocating. Even the faint hum of the air conditioning seemed to vanish. And then Karen spoke. Judge Judy's movements were measured and exact, almost clinical in their precision. Every page she flipped felt like another mask being lifted. Karen shifted in her seat, the sparkle fading from her smile, replaced by a faint tremor at the edge of her mouth. Her fingers brushed over her diamond bracelet again, as if it could remind her of her identity and status. Without glancing up, Judy tapped her pen lightly against the paper. This handwriting, she said calmly. You're saying your assistant adjusted the amount? Karen nodded quickly. Yes, she manages those details. Judy's eyes rose slowly, cool, focused, unwavering. Then explain this. She held up 2 sheets side by side. One was the chandelier invoice. The other was from a completely separate claim months earlier. The handwriting was identical, same curves, same pressure, same unmistakable style. Karen went still. You file quite a number of insurance claims, don't you? Judy asked. Damaged flooring, broken fixtures, water issues, remarkably convenient timing. Karen's throat tightened. Things happen when you own several properties. You wouldn't understand. Try me, Judy replied, her voice cutting through the tension. The audience leaned forward. Even the cameras seemed to inch closer. Karen searched for an answer and found none that worked. Her gaze flicked toward the back row where Monica sat frozen, her pale face revealing more than words could. Elena's voice entered the silence, shaking but determined. She told me she'd destroy my reputation if I said the chandelier was already cracked. She wanted the insurance money. Karen spun toward her. That's false. The gavel struck once, sharp and commanding. Nuff. The room froze. Even Karen's breathing sounded too loud. Judy leaned forward slightly, her tone controlled and deliberate. You understand that dishonesty under oath is not something that looks good on record, Miss Beaumont. Karen swallowed. I'm not being dishonest. I just adjusted the narrative. Judy finished, which in this courtroom amounts to the same thing. The camera closed in. A bead of sweat appeared near Karen's temple, her once perfect posture shrinking little by little. The overhead light seemed harsher now, as if judgment itself had narrowed in on her. Elena lowered her head. I only wanted to keep my job, she whispered. The words landed with quiet weight. Judy turned to her, voice softening slightly. And instead you were dismissed. Elena nodded. She said people like me don't belong in homes like hers. A low murmur swept through the audience. Anger, disbelief, sympathy. Karen slammed her palm against the desk. I don't need this spectacle. I could buy this entire production if I wanted. The statement lingered in the air. Judy didn't blink. Her gaze stayed fixed. Be careful, she said evenly. The last individual who believed justice could be purchased left here financially ruined. Karen forced a smirk. We'll see, she replied, though her voice wavered. Judy tapped her pen twice against a closed folder. Perhaps we will. Because I haven't opened the primary file yet. The room felt suspended in time. Her fingers hovered briefly before opening the folder with deliberate precision. Papers spread across the bench. Bank records, property transfers, contractor invoices, each page reflecting the fluorescent light like fragments of undeniable truth. Miss Beaumont, Judy began steadily. Please confirm. The residence at 214 Brookhaven Drive is where you currently live, correct? Karen hesitated just long enough to notice. Yes, one of my properties. One of them, Judy repeated calmly. And you own it outright. Karen smirked faintly. Of course. Interesting, Judy replied. Because according to these documents, the property hasn't been fully in your name for over a year. Karen's expression faltered. What? Judy turned another page. The deed was transferred to a corporation you control. That corporation currently owes more than $600,000 in unpaid taxes. A wave of gasps moved through the room. Cameras zoomed in as sweat began to show through Karen's flawless appearance. That's irrelevant to this case, she snapped. It speaks directly to your credibility, Judy answered. When someone bends the truth in one area, it tends to follow them everywhere. Karen attempted a laugh, but it sounded dry. You don't understand corporate strategy. Assets are moved all the time. Judy leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping to a calm intensity. Then let's discuss those assets. She lifted a smaller document marked confidential. I have a statement from your contractor. He claims he was never paid for installing the chandelier. Karen's face lost its color. That's inaccurate. Judy's expression remained unchanged. Would you prefer I read the section where he references filing legal claims? Or the part where he states your assistant pleaded with him not to proceed? Karen's posture stiffened. Judy spoke evenly. This is my courtroom, Miss Beaumont, Not your executive office. The tension became suffocating. Even the faint hum of the ventilation seemed to disappear. And then Karen responded. The mansion was no longer hers. It was already in foreclosure. Karen's hands tightened around the edge of the desk, her face losing all color. Lies, she whispered harshly. All of it. She's nobody. Judy fixed her with a steady gaze, her eyes narrowing slightly. That nobody is the only person here brave enough to tell the truth. Karen's lips quivered, but nothing came out. Across the room, Elena sat frozen, one hand covering her mouth. There was no triumph in her expression, only quiet sorrow. The gavel struck again. That will be all, Miss Ruiz. You may step down. Monica stood silent, but somehow lighter, as if she had just set down a burden she'd carried for years. Karen muttered something under her breath, but even she seemed afraid to hear it. Judy leaned back slightly, her voice calm but firm. Miss Beaumont, you've lied under oath. You've taken advantage of those beneath you. But in this courtroom, money cannot buy silence. The camera moved in closer. Judy's expression remained composed, unreadable but resolute. She turned to Elena. You were her housekeeper, correct? Elena nodded. Then tell me what you were maintaining, and what she was concealing. The words about the mansion still lingered in the air like smoke, sharp and persistent. Karen sat motionless, pale yet burning underneath. A ruler brought down before everyone's eyes. The audience leaned forward silent, aware they were witnessing more than a case. They were watching a collapse. Judy turned slightly. Morels, you may continue. Elena stood slowly, carefully unfolding the worn envelope she had held since the hearing began. Her hands trembled. This is my termination letter, she said softly. It says I was dismissed for damaging property. But I think she just needed someone to blame. Judy signaled for the bailiff to collect it. Add it to the evidence. Elena continued, her voice steady despite the emotion. I worked in that house for 4 years. I knew every corner, every detail. That chandelier had a crack long before it fell. I told her about it. Karen shot her hand up. That's a lie. You have no proof. Judy cut in smoothly. Miss Beaumont, she just provided it. Karen blinked, thrown off. That's not proof. It's sworn testimony, Judy replied. Something you've had difficulty providing. A ripple of restrained laughter moved through the audience before fading into silence. Judy flipped through the file Monica had verified earlier. According to these financial records, the insurance payout for the chandelier was deposited into your personal account, not a property account. Would you like to explain that? Karen stumbled over her words. That's my accountant's mistake. It happens. Your accountant, Judy repeated. The same one listed here as terminated for falsifying records. The last bit of color drained from Karen's face. The faint hum of the ceiling fan filled the silence. Elena spoke again, quieter this time, almost sympathetic. You had everything. Why do this? Karen turned sharply. You think you understand what it's like? People waiting for you to fail. I built everything from nothing. Judy's gaze didn't shift. And now you're dismantling it the same way. Karen let out a brittle laugh. You don't understand power, Judge. You use fear. I use money. It's the same thing. No, Judy said, leaning forward. Fear ends when truth shows up. Money only buys time before it does. The gavel struck again, sharp and commanding. I've heard enough of your stories, Miss Beaumont, Judy continued. I'm interested in facts. Karen's hand shook as she reached for her glass of water, the glass rattling against the desk. Judy closed the folder in front of her, a small motion, but final. You built your empire on deception, and when something is built on lies, it doesn't fall all at once. It breaks apart piece by piece, with every truth uncovered. The room felt colder. The audience sat breathless. Judy turned to the clerk. Bring in the contractor's file. Let's see what happens when arrogance meets evidence. Karen looked up quickly, her composure finally shattering. For the first time, fear was unmistakable. The bailiff placed a thick brown folder on the bench with a heavy thud. The sound echoed longer than it should have. Karen's hand trembled against the desk. She forced a smile, though it barely held. More documents. How many do you need for this performance? Judy didn't respond. She opened the folder, flipping through page after page with steady rhythm. The camera zoomed in. Contracts, payment logs, foreclosure notices. Then she spoke. Miss Beaumont, she said calmly, do you remember the date? May 19th of this year. Karen blinked, uncertainty flickering across her face. Why would I remember that? Because that's the day the bank repossessed your property at 214 Brookhaven Drive. The words hit hard, sending waves of disbelief through the courtroom. Gasps spread, someone whispering in shock. Karen froze for a moment, then let out a hollow, brittle laugh. That's absurd. I live there. I walked out of that house this morning. No, Judy replied calmly, turning another page. You walked out of a staged residence. The deed, mortgage, and tax liens were all transferred to a holding company after foreclosure. You're not the owner. You're a tenant. The camera caught it. The moment fear cracked through Karen's expression, the confidence vanished, leaving raw panic behind. That's not true, she stammered. My lawyer withdrew. Judy cut in, her gaze sharpening. 2 months ago. Ethical concerns. Karen went completely still. The room fell silent except for the faint hum of the air vent, as if even the building itself was listening. Elena's hands trembled in her lap. She wasn't smiling. There was no satisfaction in watching someone unravel, only the weight of truth being revealed. Judy spoke again, her tone quieter now but heavier. You built this entire claim on ownership. Yet the very thing you paraded, your mansion, your empire, is no longer yours. You lost it long before you walked in here. Karen's voice rose, edged with panic. You can't prove that. You can't. I already have, Judy said, lifting the foreclosure document. Signed, dated, and recorded. A ripple of reaction moved through the audience again, but this time it wasn't shock. It was recognition. The truth had finally taken center stage. Karen sank back into her chair. This wasn't supposed to happen, she murmured. It's all just a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, Judy repeated. You gave false testimony. You created misleading evidence. You took advantage of people who trusted you. That's not confusion. That's deliberate manipulation. The tears gathered in Karen's eyes, but she still tried to hold on to her composure. You don't get it. I had to. Everyone expected me to be perfect. Judy's expression softened slightly. Not sympathy, but understanding. Then maybe perfection isn't what you should have been chasing. The gavel struck once, firm and final. Karen sat motionless, her eyes shifting between the foreclosure papers and the courtroom around her, as if the walls themselves had turned against her. The camera slowly circled. Her jewelry, her flawless hair, her polished nails, now just remnants of a life built on illusion. Judy remained silent for a moment, simply watching. That silence carried more weight than any words. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady, almost gentle. You've spent this entire proceeding proving that money cannot purchase truth. And yet you keep trying. Karen struggled to swallow, her pride catching in her throat. You think you understand me, she rasped. You think sitting up there gives you the right to judge my life? Judy didn't react. No, but it gives me the duty to remind you what happens when arrogance replaces integrity. A murmur moved through the audience, part sympathy, part realization. Even those who disliked Karen now saw something else, not just a villain, but someone who had built everything on a fragile foundation. From her seat, Elena spoke softly, just loud enough to be heard. She doesn't even realize I forgive her. Karen turned sharply. You forgive me, she snapped, eyes shining. After everything. Elena nodded, her voice steady despite the tremble. Because if I don't, I'll become like you, trapped by pride. The words struck deeper than any ruling. Karen's lips parted, but nothing came out. The camera lingered on her face, confusion, disbelief, and then something else, a flicker of shame. Judy leaned forward slightly. People don't fall from power, she said. They step off the edge convinced they won't fall. Karen's breath caught. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Judy's expression softened just a fraction. You have no idea how much I wish I weren't. The clerk's pen moved quietly across the file, each stroke marking the end of Karen's illusion. For the first time, Karen looked small. Her posture slumped, her voice unsteady. You don't know what it's like, she muttered. When everyone expects perfection. One mistake, and they tear you apart. Judy nodded slowly. And instead of facing that pressure, you chose to push others down to stay standing. Karen looked away, unable to respond. A tear slipped free, tracing down the cheek she had spent years keeping flawless. Elena watched quietly, her empathy worn thin by exhaustion. The balance of power had completely flipped. The once dominant woman was now undone by her own actions, while the dismissed housekeeper stood quietly stronger without saying a word. The camera slowly moved toward Judy's gavel resting beside the open file. She didn't reach for it. She didn't have to. The silence itself felt like the final judgment. Judy finally spoke, her voice calm and controlled. Then let's talk about what happens when business turns into deception. The audience exhaled at once, as if they had been holding their breath the entire time. Truth didn't arrive loudly. It settled in quietly, almost reverently. Karen's hands, once flawless and confident, now trembled slightly. The diamond bracelet on her wrist caught the light, but instead of shining, it looked harsh, like a reminder of everything she used to hide behind. Judy signaled to the clerk, display the bank records. A screen lit up beside her bench. Lines of transactions appeared, one after another, each more damaging than the last. Karen's eyes widened. What is this? Transfers from your employee pension fund, Judy said evenly. Over $200,000 moved into your personal account. A wave of shock moved through the room. Gasps spread quickly, sharp like breaking glass. Even the bailiff seemed momentarily unsettled. That's private, Karen snapped, her voice breaking. You can't show that. You made it public when you filed this case. Judy replied without raising her tone. You opened this door yourself. Karen's face flushed. It was temporary borrowing. My employees knew I'd return it. Judy remained steady. You took their trust, and according to these records, nothing was returned. A low murmur filled the courtroom. The air felt heavier now, charged with disbelief. Elena covered her mouth, eyes glossy, not from satisfaction but sadness. Judy turned to her. Did you know about this? Elena shook her head slowly. No, but I knew something wasn't right. She was always afraid. The more powerful she acted, the less kind she became. The camera cut back to Karen. Her composure was gone. Her voice rose, cracking. You think I wanted this? My life fell apart. My husband left. The bank turned on me. Everyone took advantage. Judy watched without reaction, then spoke more softly. Then you needed help, not revenge. Karen froze, breathing uneven. You don't understand, she whispered. People like me can't fall apart. We have to keep it together. Judy leaned slightly forward. And how is that working out for you now? Murmurs moved through the audience. No laughter, no judgment, just uneasy recognition. Judy let the silence stretch before speaking again. You claim you're a victim, but victims don't forge records or steal from people who trust them. They face their reality. Karen's breathing grew uneven. You don't know what I've been through, she whispered, tears finally breaking through. The camera moved closer. The polished image she had carried into the courtroom was gone. Judy's voice dropped. Then tell the truth. Karen's eyes shifted between Elena and Judy. She shook her head slightly. If I do that, everything I built is gone. Judy didn't look away. Then maybe that's what it takes for something real to begin. That hit harder than anything else. Karen broke. The sound came out suddenly, raw and filtered, collapsing through years of control. The courtroom didn't interrupt her. Even Judy stayed silent. When the crying eased, Judy spoke gently. Then tell us what's left when the lies are gone. For the first time, Karen gave a small nod. Judy didn't move for a moment. She simply observed, calm, steady, unshaken. Karen sat forward, no longer composed, no longer guarded. The illusion she had built was gone completely. Take your time, Judy said softly. It wasn't an order, it was space. Karen looked toward the camera, then at Elena, then down at her hands. Silence filled the room so completely it felt heavy. Then, finally, she spoke. I wasn't always like this, she said quietly. I used to care. But Judy said nothing. She simply let her continue. Karen lifted her eyes slowly, glassy and unguarded, as the truth began to surface. When my husband left, I had nothing left behind. No degree, no savings, no identity that felt like mine. Just a ring and a surname that no longer carried meaning. I promised myself I would never feel powerless again. The camera moved in closer as her voice began to break, the strength she had built over years finally starting to crack. So I rebuilt everything, Karen continued. I worked 16 hours a day. I learned how to smile in rooms that wanted me to fail. Her breath shook as she spoke. And when I finally got there, when I finally had everything I thought I wanted, she stopped, struggling to continue. Judy's voice came softly. Realized what? Karen exhaled shakily. That it wasn't success. It was just acting. Every meeting, every outfit, every deal, I was just pretending I wasn't terrified. Pretending I belonged there. The courtroom stayed completely still. Even the bailiff's expression had softened without him noticing. Karen wiped her face, smearing what was left of her makeup. People called me ruthless, she said quietly. Maybe I was. But I didn't know how to stop. Because if I stopped pretending, then I didn't know who I was anymore. Her voice broke as she looked up. What happens now? Judy's expression shifted. Not sympathy, but something steadier. Understanding, now, she said calmly. We find out if you can live without pretending. She closed the file gently. You've admitted more than wrongdoing today, Miss Beaumont. You've admitted you're human. A pause. The question is whether you can rebuild from that. Karen sat still, tears running down her face, caught somewhere between collapse and the possibility of change. The courtroom had gone quiet in a way that felt heavier than sound itself. Like every mask in the room had already fallen. Judy set her pen down slowly beside the gavel. You may sit, she said quietly. Karen didn't respond. She was already seated, but it looked like something inside her had given way completely. Elena glanced toward her. Not with victory, not with anger, but with a quiet sadness. The kind that comes from watching someone finally face what they've avoided for years. The camera held both women in frame, once divided by status and power, now just two people sitting in the same silence. Judy's voice carried through the room. This court has seen pride, deception, and desperation. But underneath all of it, there is still one thing: choice. Every lie leaves a choice behind it, to keep hiding or to finally tell the truth. Karen blinked slowly, her makeup fading under tears. What if it's too late? She whispered. It's never too late, Judy replied. But the longer you wait, the harder it becomes. A soft exhale moved through the courtroom. Karen looked down at her hands. I didn't want to hurt her, she said quietly. I just couldn't stand the idea of someone who had nothing looking at me without fear. It made me feel small. Elena's voice came gently. Respect doesn't come from fear. It comes from decency. Silence returned again, deep, steady. Karen looked at her properly now. Really looked. You should hate me, she said. I did, Elena admitted. But hate keeps me tied to your story. I don't want that anymore. I want my own life. Something shifted across Karen's face. Pain, understanding, and regret settling in at once. Judy spoke again, calm and firm. Ms. Morales, your testimony will be considered. Thank you for your honesty. Elena nodded and sat down slowly, not victorious, just free. Judy turned back to Karen. You've been exposed and you've confessed. That isn't punishment. That's clarity. Her voice lowered slightly. And clarity is what justice is meant to bring. Karen's voice trembled. So what happens now? Judy didn't look away. Now we prepare the ruling. You may not agree with it, but you will understand it. Karen gave a small, broken nod. Her tears slowed, leaving behind something quieter. Exhaustion, honesty, emptiness. The gavel did not fall. Not yet. The silence itself carried weight. Judy turned to the bailiff. Prepare my ruling. He nodded and gathered the documents. In the distance, sunlight broke through the courtroom window. It didn't land on authority or accusation. It fell across Karen. Not as comfort, but as consequence. No murmurs remained now. No shifting in seats, no restless movement, only silence. The kind of silence that feels earned after truth has fully landed. Judge Judy straightened in her chair, hands folded calmly in front of her. Her eyes moved across the courtroom, briefly resting on Karen, then Elena, then the stack of documents that had carried every hidden fact into the open like a ticking weight. When she spoke, her voice was even, precise, and controlled. This court has heard more than testimony today. It has heard confession, denial, courage, and consequence. It has witnessed misuse of power and the testing of integrity. And through all of it, one fact remains clear: arrogance cannot survive exposure. Karen sat motionless. Her mascara had faded into dark streaks. Her hair had lost its polish. Her breathing was uneven. But for the first time, she wasn't arguing. She was listening. Ms. Morales, Judy continued, your termination was unjust. You were pressured, taken advantage of, and made responsible for another person's dishonesty. This court awards you restitution of $8,400, along with additional compensation for lost wages and emotional harm. Elena's eyes widened slightly. She didn't smile. She simply nodded as quiet tears slipped down her face. The relief looked heavier than joy, more like release. Judy turned her gaze to Karen. The space between their positions felt longer than distance itself. Miss Beaumont, she said firmly, your claim is dismissed. Karen lowered her head, staring blankly at the desk. The posture of control was gone entirely. Your behavior in and out of this courtroom shows a repeated pattern of deception, Judy continued. This matter will be referred for further review. Karen said nothing. I am also ordering you to cover all court costs and legal fees. Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. The room felt different now, not harsh, but stripped bare, as if all illusion had been removed at once. Judy leaned forward just a little. Let me be clear. This is not revenge. This is balance. Justice does not exist to punish emotionally. It exists to correct what has been broken. The courtroom stayed frozen. Even the air felt still. You came here to prove power. Judy added more quietly. You will leave understanding its cost. A tear finally slipped down Karen's face. Not loud, not dramatic. Just the kind that arrives when denial can no longer hold. Judy lifted the gavel and paused for a moment in silence. Court is adjourned. The strike that followed wasn't sharp, it felt final. Like closure rather than force. Karen did not stand. Elena did not linger. The audience remained seated for a moment, unsure whether to move or simply breathe. Judy gathered her files and walked out without another word. Only one idea seemed to remain behind her, that wealth can build surroundings but never character. The room stayed still even after she left. Elena was the first to rise. Her chair made a soft sound as she stood, holding the envelope that had once marked her dismissal but now represented truth instead of shame. Karen remained seated. Her posture had collapsed inward, as if the weight of everything finally had somewhere to rest. The bracelet on her wrist no longer looked like status, only metal. Elena walked past her slowly. For a brief moment their eyes met. There was no anger there, no victory. Only recognition between two people shaped by the same experience in different ways. Karen spoke quietly, almost breaking. Was it worth it? Elena paused, then replied softly. Telling the truth always is. She walked away. Light from the open door spilled into the courtroom, crossing Karen's face and exposing every remaining trace of her composure. Judy appeared once more near the exit, gathering her files. She glanced toward Karen but said nothing. None was needed. When the door closed, Karen was alone. The room slowly emptied, chairs sliding, footsteps fading, papers shifting. Life continuing in quiet pieces around her. She looked down at the file in front of her. Once something she believed made her untouchable. Now it only reflected what had been uncovered. Her fingers trembled as they touched it. "I thought if I looked powerful," she whispered, barely audible, "no one would see how scared I was." No one answered. Only silence remained, settling into the space where certainty used to be. His voice was quiet, respectful. "Ma'am, court is over." Karen gave a faint nod. "Yeah," she replied weakly. "I guess it is." The courtroom lights dimmed as the bailiff stepped out. The atmosphere changed instantly. No tension left, just the low hum of the air system and the heavy quiet that follows a final decision. Outside the courtroom, the world carried on. Reporters talking, footsteps rushing, phones snapping photos. Life continued without pause, but inside Karen still sat in her seat, holding on to the last echoes of Judge Judy's words. "Money builds homes, not character." A thin beam of sunlight stretched across the bench where Judy had been moments earlier. Dust floated through it slowly, like fragments of judgment suspended in the air. Karen closed her eyes. For the first time, she wasn't imagining headlines or applause or control. Just silence, raw, unfiltered, and real. The bailiff switched off the remaining lights. In the darkness, Karen's voice broke softly. "I thought I could buy respect." No one responded. The silence itself felt like the answer, and somehow that silence said everything justice needed to say. Before the final image fades, the question lingers: can people truly change, or do they only learn how to hide better? The next morning, the city was bright, almost painfully so, like it had restarted without permission. The camera moved across a quiet neighborhood, past trimmed lawns and gated houses, until it reached a once grand mansion at 214 Brookhaven Drive. Now it stood empty. Windows covered, grass overgrown, the driveway cracked and fading. Luxury reduced to something hollow and abandoned. A small moving truck was parked outside. Karen stepped out alone. No staff, no cameras, no presence of power. Just her dressed simply, standing in front of what used to define her. She walked toward the gate. It groaned as she pushed it open. No longer automatic, no longer welcoming. Inside, every sound echoed back at her. Her footsteps, her breathing, even her hesitation. The house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like memory. She touched the wall near the stairs. Faint outlines showed where portraits once hung. Gone now, sold, removed, or forgotten. On the kitchen counter sat a half-used bottle of perfume. Nearby, a faded magazine lay curled at the edges, her face still on the cover. Power Women in Real Estate. It looked almost ironic now. In her hands, a single cardboard box. Inside it, pieces of a life that no longer held together. A photograph of her and her ex-husband smiling at an old gala. A newspaper clipping from her first sale. And a small handwritten note from Alina. "Thank you for the opportunity. I'll do my best to take care of your home." Karen sat down slowly. She held the note for a long time. It was the only thing that had survived everything unchanged. The camera circled her quietly, showing the contrast between luxury space and quiet collapse. "I used to think power meant never apologizing," she said softly. A small, tired laugh escaped her. "Turns out it just meant I was never being real." The outside wind moved through the empty property. Life continued somewhere far beyond her. Across the city, Elena unlocked the door to a modest storefront. A hand-painted sign read Morale's Cleaning Services. Her first client, a young mother, stood waiting, smiling nervously. Elena greeted her gently, steady and calm. Not loud, not proud, just sure of herself in a way she had never been before. Back at the mansion, Karen stood in the foyer one last time, surrounded by silence that no longer belonged to her.